Welcome to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast, presented by FantasyGolfBag.com, your number one source for the most in-depth PGA Tour analysis in the daily fantasy and sports betting world. Each week, our experts will discuss everything you need to know, from the course preview and key stats to top plays, fades, and strategies. Whether golf betting, grinding out cash games, or playing for a big GPP win, our team has you covered. Let's get after it.
Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast. It is Axis today playing host, and I am joined by Sky of the Golf Gurus, and we are here today to talk about the 2019 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. It is rapidly approaching. All we have to do is get through this Sunday in Canada, and it is U.S. Open week. So we're trying to get the pod out a little early. We'll also have our listener league out, and once we do, the link will be posted on Twitter and in the details of this podcast. But we have been working diligently to prepare for the U.S. Open this whole weekend, so I'll bring in Sky right now. How you doing, Sky?
Great, Axis. Yeah, I absolutely love the U.S. Open. It's my favorite of the majors, so really looking forward to it.
More than Augusta, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's my third favorite.
Maybe it's Brooks. Maybe it's Brooks going back to back.
That helps.
But no, I just love the test of golf at the U.S. Open venues, always changing, and this should be, one of the best, absolutely, with Pebble.
I think I'd go Masters, British Open, U.S. Open. But anyway, still love them all. They're still majors. They're a very thin line between favorites and all that. But yeah, so like I said, we're going to Pebble Beach. The tour plays it every year as part of the AT&T Pro-Am. However, as we know, the USGA loves to jazz up whatever course they're going to. I think everybody's hoping this year, though, because of how iconic Pebble is and all that, people haven't really been too happy with what the USGA has done the last, I don't know, what does it seem, 4 to 5 years?
Right about, yeah.
So I think a lot of people are hoping that going back to Pebble, there's only so much they can do there in many's eyes to, obviously it's going to be a lot shorter than, some U.S. Opens. So, like I said, they play the Pro-Am here 2 rounds every year. And so we do have statistical data from their laser data. However, the USGA will change it. It plays at about 6,800 yards for the Pro-Am, and it's a par 72. The USGA will change it to a par 71 and boost it up to the scorecard length of 7,075 yards. It'll play, obviously, a little different day to day, but the major changes to the course will be holes number 9, 10, 13, and 17. 9 will go from 481 yards to 526 yards. 10, 446 to 495. 13 will add about 40 yards too, from 400 to 445. And number 17 will go from a 177 par 3 to a 208-yard par 3. So a lot of the yardage that is added, a majority of it are on those holes, and they will convert. Number 2 is the one that will convert to make it a par 71. It'll go from a relatively easy par 5 to a very difficult par 4. So that's a look at the course. Pebble is one of the shorter courses. I think it's the shortest course they play all year on tour. So with a little added length, it'll change it a little bit, but I still think a majority of the course will play the same as far as approach distance in. They're going to bring the fairways in. And I know, Sky, you did a lot of research last night on less than drivers, since this is a course where that is employed. I mean, DJ's cumulative driving distance this year was only 285 at Pebble, so that tells you all you need to know about clubbing down. So I'm going to throw it your way to talk about what you found last night.
Absolutely. And even before diving into the lesson driver stuff, we talk about the lengthening of the holes and the way it played back in 2010 at these distances. Only 2 of the 18 holes played under par on the entire course, which is absolutely wild. The par 5s on total played over par as well. So, I mean, they averaged, on average, I think it was 74.98, so right about 4 strokes above par was the course average in 2010. Insanity. So I'm hoping for absolute carnage all week long. And if we start looking again, if we dial in on just the off the tee game, I know you've done an extensive research. We talk about the approach side of things, but off the tee, we really looked at kind of drives that are less than 250 yards, less than 260, less than 270, and just kind of broke these into buckets. And we look at courses played since 2014. Pebble has 6 of the top 9 years played, so Pebble specifically, of drives under less than 250 yards. Like, it's unbelievable how much the driver is taken out of the hands of the players here. So if you look again, under 250, under 260, under 270, we have 26.1% of drives under 250, almost 36% under 260, and just under 50% of drives here under 270 yards. So you're not being able to pull driver like Phil was able to at the Pro-Am earlier this year. It's really going to be a club down, Cedric, and with the rough being up, like we know the U.S. Open loves to do, we're going to really need to focus on my side at least, those that are hitting the fairways. So if we look at courses specifically, if we're just talking about those that are off the tee game, pretty much similar. Harbortown and Innisbrook are the 2 off the tee that are just below those marks, but Pebble has a clear number 1 on all 3 of those. So we'll talk a little bit later on player specifics, but I just want to note that how drastically different that is from some of the other courses played each year.
Oh yeah, it makes complete sense too. And when you look at the scorecard, and then even if you looked at a layout of the course, you can even, without even watching the golf on it, you could picture like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. He's got to hit it here. They got to hit it there. We're not going to try to cut over the bluffs in the wind, things of that nature. So we then use basically all this driving data we have. So you helped me do something really cool with past data from Pebble. We looked at guys' average driving distance coming into Pebble. So, and then we grouped them. So, guys hitting around 300 were grouped together in a bucket. So like a DJ and a Brooks. And then a guy like a Kisner and, I don't know, whoever else hits around, 290. They're grouped in a bucket as well. And we use that data basically to see, okay, this is how they normally drive it. How did they then drive it in their Pebble rounds? Like, how much did they really club down? And the example I had used in the article, which you can find on the site, is DJ versus Kisner. DJ outdrove him by 25 yards. So you can still, but it almost seemed like a choice for Kisner to be that low, like 261. I know even clubbing, you can hit further than that. But so I guess the point is even shorter hitters are clubbing down and making choices to approach from a little further back, because Pebble actually had the highest percentage of any course over the last 4 years of shots within or under 150 yards, I believe. So even clubbing down, like, you're still going to have some wedges in hand, even if you're not the longest hitter. So the point of this was to find out, all right, if I'm typically long off the tee, where's a lot of my approach shots going to come at Pebble? If I'm short off the tee, we can try to guess where a majority of shots are going to come. Even for the longest and shortest hitters, many of those were between 100 and 150 yards. The longest hitters had a few more real gap wedges in as far as under 100 yards. So, we did all this. It's in the article on the site if you want to go read it more. I'm not going to list all the top 25 players from this weighted approach category that we did. But if you'd like to sign up, it's in there. We break down every bucket, every driving distance bucket within 10 yards, and then we break down every approach bucket within, we have the 50 to 75, 75 to 100, etc. We break all down the percentages of approach shots coming from those ranges, and then we weighted it all and listed the top 25 golfers from that. So if you want to see that, we'll discuss some of that as we get into our player pools, but I'm not going to read all 25 of those guys. But the top guy, which I did put publicly, was Mr. Matsuyama. So I don't know your thoughts on that. I know you looked through that stuff as well as you were compiling a lot of that data. But
oh, absolutely. And I just think it brings a different wrinkle when you're talking to course fit. I mean, to your point, I hammered home, obviously, the number of drives that are going to be hit, less than 250 yards. But that is going to play differently for Kisner versus DJ. And then not only is it going to play differently, but we've factored in when we're looking at that overall number is how well they do on a strokes gained approach side of things from those specific ranges. So it really is leveling the playing field when we're looking at players' course fit and able to really give our prediction on who's going to lead in strokes gained approach each week. I think it's a phenomenal tool that we're adding to our arsenal here at Fantasy Golf Bag.
Oh, absolutely. And it led me to essentially the key range, I think, this week. And again, it's very broad. It's 50 yards, but I assume it will be between 100 and 150 yards. Like whoever's wedges are really dialed in, and because obviously the greens are going to be as fast as they can have them, but maybe not have potential wind gusts blowing balls off the green. Like there's that fine line that the USGA does tread. So maybe, so you're really going to want to dial it in. Bogey avoidance, you're not, just make par. Par, great score this week, as always in a U.S. Open. But if the wind ramps up on the coast here, which I know it looks pretty docile.
Yeah,
right,
but we are 4 days, 5 days,
yeah,
5 days out.
It's the coast, so
for sure, everything's different on the coast. So, it should be carnage. I'm praying for it. I really want it. I love when the tournaments are over par winning score. It's the best.
I won't say it's the best, but I don't hate it like some. I appreciate it for what it is. Sometimes I think the artificial hardening of things does make it a little ridiculous, but I don't mind really fast greens. I don't mind really narrow fairways. I just want it, There's some things where I still think when good shots are not being rewarded, that's when I start getting a little annoyed with the USGA. But like if you stick it from relatively close and it just rolls off or blows off, like I don't know. Sometimes I have a hard time with it, but I don't get too bent out of shape about it. It's one tournament a year.
So one thing that was quite interesting, Joel Dahman was on the Take Cast with Davis Maddock earlier this week. Really interesting pod, kind of hearing about his career. But he talked about what he's heard in regards to Pebble's greens. So in the past 2 times that they held the U.S. Open, the USGA really baked out the greens. And what Pebble said is they were quite upset because it altered the greens for the rest of the playing season, and they had to lower prices for people to come play Pebble because the greens were such in bad shape. So they said this year potentially that they are going to fast, quicker ones, but it might not be as horrible as it was in those 2 instances where maybe those approaches are sticking a little bit more, or we're not running at a 14 on the stimp. They're the smallest greens on tour, so potentially maybe that angle of the fairways might be a little bit harder, but landing on the greens might be able to reward those good shots that you talked about a little bit more if it plays that way.
Yeah, and I'm only going to try to prognosticate so much with how this course will play. We know it'll play more difficult. We know that.
Yep.
How much more is hard to say. So all I can really do is use the info I have, which is the USGA card, the lengthening of their holes, and I still think you can relatively well project out a decent bucket of where these guys will be approaching from. So I think as we move into key stats, and I mentioned 2 comp courses in the article, and I'd take this info with a grain of salt because again, the comp courses were based on how we think this will play, and I comped them based on approach range, and I used a pretty broad range. So if you want to look at Glen Abbey and the Old White TPC courses, they were the closest in comparison as far as the percentage of shots golfers will be taking into the green. Obviously, completely different courses than Pebble, but if you want to look at how guys approach down those courses if they've played them, I think you can maybe use it as a tie break if you want, or a lot of these studs aren't really rolling through playing those courses anyway, so I don't know how much data you're going to have, but
yeah, no, it's an interesting angle. I love looking at comp courses in specific ways of looking at it, and now we have the numbers and type of stuff where we can look at specific stats at specific courses. You know what I mean? We talked about off the tee game at Innisbrook and Harbour Town. You can look at the approach game from what you talked about on Old White TPC and Glen Abbey. You can parse that up and kind of see what players might be finding different buckets like that. So, I mean, no, phenomenal work on your piece, and I think it leaves us with as much intel as we can going into, another major.
So speaking of stats, then you want to briefly go over, what are you going to be? You don't have to go into a specific weighting, but like, what do you think most important? I guess like, what are you going to be selecting your player pool from mainly?
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to be really keying in, and I don't probably do this very often, but weighted driving accuracy. Like, I really, really think the fairways are crucial this week. And even with the club down, people aren't as good as you think when they're getting in these lower buckets of driving distance. So weighted driving accuracy, weighted bogey avoidance, I think is, again, critical. And again, we're bringing in those stats when we talk about driving accuracy and bogey avoidance from the European Tour for those guys that are playing too. So we have those from over there. And then I love looking at, we just released our par 4 specific, par 3, par 4, par 5 specific numbers. But I'm going to be looking at the strokes gained tee to green on those par 4s specifically, as well as we know it's playing at a par 71 where fairways are a little bit difficult to hit. If we talked about greens are difficult to hit, so we're going to bring in that around the green game play on par 4s. So with putting being so variant, and obviously with these fast greens, and they're going to be bumpier than they were earlier on in the spring, it really, when we look at par 4s, it factors how well you're getting to the hole, and putting is what it is after. So those are probably my biggest keys outside of the standard tee to green ball striking type of stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I really like looking at the strokes gained on par 4s as well, which if you'd like to find all this information, you can do that. We post it on the site, and you can find it under the Fantasy Jesus Rolling Stats tab. But I will be looking at that as well. I think the most important thing for me is, and I'm really going to take, I guess, a chance on this because it's a small part of the game overall, but I think it will be the most important and where a golfer can really score from and not mess up from is just the 100 to 150 yard range bucket. So that'll be important to me. I don't think distance will be as much. Like I wrote in the article, maybe you could slightly weight driving distance if you want to take a different approach to what other people will be doing, because those guys can take advantage of some of these holes. It's just a majority of them they can't. So if you want to maybe be different, you could weight that a little bit. DJ has done just fine at this tournament. I know two rounds are not played at Pebble in that tournament, but I think for me, though, the most heavily is going to be approach and how we weighted it out from where we estimate shots will be coming from. And then the par 3s will be pretty tricky here. I think they're all over 200 yards now with the lengthening of 17. So I think if you want to look at approach numbers from 200 yards plus, because those approach numbers do include par 3 tee shots, I think that's something that you could weight as well, since, I was so wrong. Number 7 is not anywhere near 200.
Yeah, 7 is the short one by the water. Yep.
I had something else in my head, but the other 3 are pretty long. So, and their par 5 approach shots will probably be around 200 for the longer hitters. So that's mainly what I'm going to be looking at. I don't think I'm going to get too fancy here. Obviously, if we're talking about the course, POA greens, we have those splits up on the site as well, where we compare their POA putting to their baseline strokes gained putting number. If you want to see who you can give a little boost to this week, or maybe a little downgrade, even though I'll warn you, Brooks is on the bottom 10 of POA putting, but as we know, has not affected him in the majors. So just grain of salt.
I would talk to the weighted course history that we have only looks at the Pebble Beach course being played. So if those are looking at AT&T Pro-Am specific numbers, obviously that encapsulates Spyglass and Monterey. So our weighted course history has just the Pebble Beach course played.
And a little teaser from that, I doubt people would guess who has the best weighted course history at Pebble Beach with more than 4 rounds played. I'd be surprised. I mean, I'll just say it. If you'll give you a little tease out there. Brendan Grace has played very well at Pebble. Very small sample, but played very well compared to his normal baseline, and Mr. Jimmy Walker. So, just talk.
And Jimmy's got 11 rounds there too. So
he started off hot this week too.
Yeah.
Kinda
No,
faded,
Jimmy's been playing much
unfortunately.
better off the tee the last few weeks.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe could have guessed. Grace doesn't surprise me. I guess I was a little surprised when I saw Jimmy Walker was
The
playing.
interesting about Grace is his two finishes at Pebble are 28 and 20. So like at the
AT&T,
tournament.
yeah.
So that's night
he
and day,
rakes
you
at
know what I
Pebble,
mean, from
yeah.
what we look at. So that's why it's so important to eliminate Monterey and Spyglass out of this, because I mean they're much different courses. Like, I
And they're
guess
not
not
playing
much
them.
different. They're short, yeah, Monterey's like one of the easiest courses out there. I mean, Ted Potter, 59 watch there.
Yeah.
So I mean that's
Yeah, and didn't
not
Phil
realistic.
have this year at one of those, or was that the Desert Class? That Desert Class.
That was desert. Yep.
I hate those tournaments
But
that mix courses.
yeah, so I mean,
Sorry.
it just truly is a difference of way of looking at it. So I wouldn't advise. I mean, of course, it's important to have a strong. It's shown importance in the past two U.S. Opens played here. That AT&T lead up, may have correlated a little bit with Tiger and GMAC, but I just want to see how they did at Pebble personally.
Oh yeah. All right, so got the course out of the way, got some rough key stats out of the way. It's now time to talk about who we are actually looking at playing this week. So when the pricing came out, a few things caught my eye. We'll get to them. I guess the first one would be actually kind of in this 10K range. So we have Brooks at 11.6, DJ 11.3, Tiger 10.7, Rory 10.5, Spieth 10.3, and then Cantlay at 10K even. So I don't know. I want to say pick your favorite and then maybe pick another guy you'd be willing to sub in if no one's going to play him type day. Like, who are you looking at up here?
I mean, it's tough not to not just look at the top two with Brooks and DJ. Personally, that's how I feel in regards to just when it comes to the biggest test in golf. And I know their skill set may be not limited, but when we talk about Bethpage to here, I mean, you had a better inkling that a bomber was going to prevail there, and it makes sense that they went 1 and 2. So when Pebble might eliminate that factor, I mean, they're just still the two best players in the world. So and they're significantly more expensive than anyone else, which I like. I like that type of thing when you have to risk it to play those type of guys. So if I'm going to rank them, it's hard for me to really say, but it would be DJ then Brooks when we're looking at this specifically, and even RBC Canadian. I'm not really factoring that too much in right now for those two, but DJ's played great ball striking wise. Brooks has not been pretty. Lucky to make the cut after that finish on Friday. But after those two, I wouldn't go down. I wouldn't play any of the other three personally. That's not where I'm going to lean on. I know people like Tiger here specifically, but I would go all the way down to Cantlay, who I strongly like to.
I think we're very similar there. Obviously, it's kind of scary to fade Brooks in majors right now. But I did it this week, and I don't know why. I think DJ's the best golfer in the world. Like, I have all my evidence to back that up, and get a $300 discount on who I think is the best golfer in the world. Like you said, 11.3. So I know major pricing will allow a little more people. You could actually play them if you really want and probably make a pretty solid lineup. But like you said, maybe people won't go that high when you can get, Ricky at 9.5, Rose 9.7, Cantlay at 10K. Maybe I'm overlooking Tiger at 10.7. I don't know. Like, I think you told me last night Tiger hasn't played what we would deem a short course in 5 years.
Yeah, which is crazy. But you'd think it would play into his skill set. He just hasn't teed up at one.
Oh, even more now,
So-
yeah, with his driving
Yeah.
woes, but his approach numbers are golden.
To me, I think he ends up being the highest owned of anyone above 10K, just because people love his Pebble track record. They love what he finished with at the Memorial. I think he will be the highest owned, which
I can't
I
blame
mean
you.
plays no, which I absolutely can't, but it plays into the favor of those who wanna go up and play Brooks and DJ.
I think DJ's my number one, and then I don't know. I'm a Rory truther, so I'll get sucked into playing Rory maybe too.
Especially if he wins today, people will love that too.
I really hope he doesn't. Although don't people normally not back the winner from the previous week? Although when it's a stud, I guess it might.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah, because he won the Players and then was
maybe
decently
hopefully
at the Masters.
Hopefully Rory shoots +3 today. I really hope he shoots +3. That'll get people off of me.
You won't find me playing Rory.
I know.
I had
You
to deal with
never
that
do
roller
that.
coaster. I somehow ended up on him at Bethpage, and I mean
Oh,
that
boy.
Friday was
Hey, he
one of
made
the
it.
most painful things I've ever watched. But he made it.
It's
He
such a
made it.
rush.
And top 10'd it.
Such a rush. Oh my gosh. It's amazing. All right. So I think we're similar. DJ number one for us. And then, I mean, basically, if you're going to tell me any of these guys but Spieth is going to be... See, but even Spieth? I don't know. I'm tired of talking about everybody. I'm not a Spieth person.
really
I can't do
know.
it. If you want to ride it, and he's a good golfer, I'm not saying he's not. If you want to ride the short game, be my guest. It's just not how I roll.
I strongly believe that, and I'm going to after the win at Memorial as well. But he would be my third-ranked golfer in the entire field. I'm looking at that, so I would go if I'm not starting at the top two. It's Cantlay.
All right. So we dropped down then below Cantlay. Rose is 9.7, Ricky 9.5, JT 9.3, John Rahm 9.2, Jason Day 9.1, and Francesco Molinari 9K even. So I looked at this range, and I automatically played JT at 9.3 at Memorial, coming off an injury. He didn't look bad. The final 9 were atrocious. Like, if you pull up that scorecard, holy crap. You'd think they let me on the course to play JT's, and actually mine probably would have been even worse, obviously, but it was bad. And but he's been playing solid this week in Canada. I jumped on him at 35-1 to win this. I think JT, for his price, might be my favorite play in this field, and I was kind of hoping he would have another middling Canada, because I was going to play him no matter what at 9.3 again. And I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts on what his ownership will come in like due to the price and him playing well this week?
Well, it just depends how, quote unquote, you would say sharp people look at the stats from this week. You would think he's back health wise as he's first tee to green after 3 rounds. So that's one look where kind of reassurance on that wrist. I don't know though. I mean, if you look who he's priced around, I mean, you think okay, you can see other people pulling in ownership, but I mean, for his talent, obviously the price is.
He's the best wedge player in the world.
It's vastly different from what it is, and what. So I mean, personally, the way I look at the 9Ks though, outside of JT, if ownership's going to come around and not be there, and he just doesn't play out west really, from my understanding. Like he's only played here once and he missed the cut to 2014. It's just
That's
kind of
so
a weird.
long ago.
For sure, it's just weird that he never comes out here and plays.
I mean, maybe it's the greens. I don't know. I'm not staring at his POA numbers, but all I
his
know
POA numbers are fine. Yeah,
all I know is this key range that I think a lot of shots are going to be coming from. He is the best in the field by far.
I'm interested to see how he does in the key ranges this week. After last week, he was intermittent on it, so we can see from that sense. But outside of him, I don't have any interest in the 9Ks. That's kind of my bold stance. Is I won't be playing anybody there.
Interesting. None?
No, I don't. And again, I'm more of a single entry 3 max kind of guy. Moving into that way outside of the large 150 at match play, but I don't like anybody.
You know what? That's actually fair. Like, there's no one else in here. Like, I saw JT and, okay, I'm playing him. But other than that, I can get behind. I mean, for the sake of talking, I don't know, pick the guy. If you're going to give me one of these guys around 10%, I guess I'd throw him in a line. If you're making 20-plus lineups, like, I don't know, if people are going to play Rose. I haven't heard much about Rose lately. Day. I don't know. I'm with you, though. This really doesn't... Normally, this is a meaty section of golfers at majors that I'm really keying in on because they're still pretty damn good golfers at 9K. And these guys are good, but yeah. I'm with you, I think. Wow.
What I think is interesting, too, is like... because I was debating the JT 28. I know you have the 33 yesterday.
35.
And 35, even better. And was looking at Jason Day with the exact same number and just looking at his Pebble, his Pro-Am. So you look at the Pro-Am numbers, he's 4th, 2nd, 5th, 11th, 4th, miscut 6th since 2013. Unbelievable numbers there. But his strokes gained field differential just at Pebble itself is still outside of top 30 in the field. In his weighted course history, he's actually playing worse at Pebble than his overall strokes gained field differential each year. So he's taking advantage on the other two courses. So that for me is, again, that indicator on it. But, so I thought I was going to like Jason Day, but not for me, no. So, yeah, I'm off the 9K unless I find JT being overlooked again.
All right, so, yeah, that's fair. I'm going to play JT, I think, no matter what his ownership is. But so if we jump into the 8K range, there are 10 guys. Give me your 2 favorites. I know that could be tough because, again, this is if you're skipping the 9s, you're probably going to like the 8s. So
my number 1 favorite by far is Paul Casey at 8.3. He's going to be my winner pick for the week. And the reason is I really, really do think getting into the fairways is incredibly important this week. And when I looked at those that are hitting the drives in those buckets that we talked about, less than 270, 260, 250, Casey significantly increases his driving accuracy when getting into those buckets compared to his standard driving accuracy. He's up 7% from his baseline when you're looking at drives over 270, up 12% when it's under 260. So he's getting out there and going to be in the fairway almost all the time. I think people are actually... I'm hoping people are going to be off of him based off of the 2 bad miscuts in the majors so far this year. He withdrew after the first round after getting sick his last time out. He's just burned people left and right, and he's sitting out there 50-1. He's 8,300. We know how good of a golfer he is, and he's shown upside this year. And we talked about the off-the-tee game, Innisbrook being one of the top 2 comps. He's won there back-to-back years. I'm in on Paul Casey as my winner at 50-1. So he's by far my favorite player in the 8Ks. I would say my number 2 would be Adam Scott. I think Scotty has so good with his irons lately. We saw it down the stretch at Memorial. He played great in regards to just ball striking game-wise. He's another one who's really showed up for the majors. Obviously, contending multiple times at majors over the last year and a half. So he'd be my number 2, which I don't think many people have that as their 1-2 in the 8Ks, which I love.
I think Adam Scott's going to be popular. He's been playing very well. Although I hope not, because he is in my top 2 from this range as well. I like the case for KC at 8.3. He'd definitely be like Scott would be a 2A to Casey 2B. But my favorite in this range will be Mr. Matsuyama at 8.8K. And a lot of that is driven, obviously, purely by the iron play. That's where he makes his bread and butter. That is his bread and butter, sorry. That's where he makes his money, I should have said. But he is the highest rated in the 8K range for me in the key approach distance that I'm looking at. In fact, he's 4th overall when I weighted out approach from the key area, even heavier in our overall bucket approach model. He's number 1, as I mentioned. I think there's a lot to like there. He's a very consistent golfer. So yeah, give me give me all the Hideki I can handle this week at 8.8.
I think this range is so much better than the 9Ks, personally. I mean, I don't have a problem with Hideki at all. I think Kuchar, I mean, he could win again today. Like, and he's a plotter type of game. Hopefully people are drawn back to Phil at 8.2 after winning this year. That game is not going to be able to translate to what it was when he won there. And that's another thing. I even, you jokingly talk about his videos and how great they are, but he's bringing in an additional driver to hit those cute cuts down the fairway is what he said. I mean, that is cut and dry. If someone who's all about hitting bombs, if he's going to do that here, you just can't pull driver. So
I think he was very self-aware, though. I think if I remember the interview, maybe I'm misremembering, but I'm pretty sure he was very self-aware about how that he was not going to be able to do that because when he was winning that tournament, they were asking him.
Without a doubt, and he was. You're right. I'm just saying from echoing my stance on the course of not being able to pull driver, which isn't like a hot take or anything. It's pretty obvious, but. If he's saying he's going to be hitting less than driver or making sure he's in the fairway, that's, echoed down the way. So I just don't think he has the game to be able to be successful doing that here.
That's fair.
And then, I mean, you got Major Slayer Xander there too. But we made our stances on the 1-2 there. I'm cool with that range.
All right, so 7K range is where obviously the meat is made up every week. We have quite a few guys in the 7K range, and it's a major, quite a few good golfers. 37 guys priced in here that I have. I might be missing a couple if they didn't have enough stats. I don't think in the 7K range I was.
No, I think we're good in the sevens, yeah.
Anyway, so I guess I'll toss it back to you quickly, and because of how long this range is, talk about three guys who, if you could only use three, if I told you get to pick three, no matter, who are the three?
Okay, so if I had to go one would be Webb at 7.7. I think Webb's style of game, again, we talk about hitting these fairways, the importance. We talk about bogey avoidance. Webb hasn't made a bogey through 54 holes right now in Canada. I hope he doesn't win because 7,700 for Webb coming off a win, I think will draw a ton of attention. So personally, I would love to see him stutter a little bit today or stumble a little bit today, but that would be my number one would be Webb there. And then if I had to jump all the way down to 7K flat, my number two in this range, and you're going to hate me for saying this, but it's Lucas Glover. Like, I think the game that
I'd only hate
Glover,
you if you told me he was going to win.
That's fair. We might have to sprinkle, but he's 150. I think you can maybe get a 12, 13 to 1 top 10, which I think is very interesting. So I think at 7K, when I talk more about this driving accuracy type of thing, Glover had some insane stats. So if you look at drives under 250, so again, that's representing a quarter of the drives at this course, he's averaging off the tee 85.7% accuracy, almost 20% better than his normal average. He's almost 10% better than his normal average when we're looking at drives under 260. Incredible difference for him, and he excelled this year on Pebble specifically. I think he was the third best player who made the cut on Pebble strokes gained field differential, and he got the short end of the wave this year. He actually finished seventh in the event, but he would have been by strokes gained field differential based on the course specifically. He would have been third. And then his last time out there, he was 11th there too. So he's got some Pebble track record. So he would be my number two, which him on those greens sweating a cut line Friday, it's going to be up your alley, man. So you might want to join me on that.
I don't know.
Those for sure are my top two. When it gets to picking the third, I am having a little bit of a struggle because there's some that I really do like. If I'm going to make a bold stance, I'll make a bold stance. I think Sabs is interesting at 7.7 because nobody is going to play him. Nobody. He has been so good as of late, man. So good. And he excels. He's much better over his baseline when it gets to difficult courses. He's one of the best players looking at his baseline of his standard play to difficult courses. And again, he's just excelled lately. I mean, he's in the top 10 of the stat model the last 5 and last 10 tournaments for someone at 7.7K. So for me, I think literally at zero ownership, he has not played good at Pebble though, but he's played good at those other 2 courses we talked about off the tee. He would be my like dart out there. If we're talking about the 7Ks, that's going to be less than 3% owned in my opinion.
Yeah. So this is a range where I kind of got a little different as well. So I'll just you said a lot of great things about Webb, so I'm not really going to talk about Webb because he would be in my top 3 from this range. Excuse me. I think I could get back to playing Kevin Na as well at 7-7.
I like that.
Very good with the shorter irons in his hand. In fact, really excels from 125 to 150. So I could definitely get behind Kevin Na. He rates out very well for me. And then JB Holmes at 7-3. So when we looked at the weighted course history, which is, again, you do what you want with course history. I like to look at it. It's nice to see, put it that way. But he has 10 rounds at Pebble, and he has played much better at Pebble than he does on your average typical course. He's played really well here for whatever reason. I haven't really dove into exactly how he's broke down strokes gained wise at Pebble, but played very well here. And then you go and look at POA splits. Putt's much better on POA, and he's got 70 rounds, which there's not a ton of a POA experience in this field as far as rounds played. And 70 is up there, and he's a quarter stroke better around on POA. Awesome. And then you get into the key approach distances, and again, he's way up there in 125 to 150, and he's 88th percentile in the field in 100 to 125 yards. So I don't know. I think that Holmes is a guy who I'll be willing to play and just hope he goes completely overlooked.
Before you go to the next one, I want to back up your Holmes stance. So he was one of 2 golfers who have over 400 drives over the last calendar year that improved by at least 5% to 70, improved by at least 7% to 60, and improved by at least 9% of 250. Him and Casey are the only 2 that do that have that legit sample size. So I agree with you.
And I mean, he's missed his last 2 cuts too, so hopefully, I mean, he really hasn't been playing that well at all since he won out west at Genesis. I mean,
I was on him at Pebble, and on him at Pebble, and then he miscut, and then he wins the next time out.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't imagine people will be playing him. That's one of those deeper guys. Like, single entry, I don't know if I have the stones yet to put him in a single entry lineup. As far as like one of the upper tier, like the $200 single entry, I don't know if I have the stone. Maybe I should. I don't know, but. Definitely, if you're making 20 plus lineups or even 10, I mean, I think JB is definitely worth tossing in a lineup there. So there's a lot to digest in the 7K range, I know, but I don't know, you could talk about a lot of guys in here, but those are definitely the 3 that I feel most comfortable tossing in some lineups. I mean, obviously you have Henrik at 7.6, Bubba 7.6, like plenty of good golfers in this range. I didn't want to talk about everybody.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna quick just give a short. I know one that we both have a bet on. 2 that we both have a bet on. Lowry and Hatton.
Yep.
Lowry could pull through today for a victory in Canada, which will incredibly jump his ownership. But getting those guys at the numbers that we did, Lowry, I think 125 and Hatton at 150, I think are tremendous bets. Hatton's been open about his ball striking game being much better. As of late on his Instagram, he's been talking about that, but he just hasn't been able to putt it, which is interesting because Hatton, in my mind, is one of the best putters out there, specifically on POA. That's why we bet him so long ago. So I really like Hatton, and Lowry is just a strong play here. U.S. Open seems like the type of game that he's built for. Really like him at 7.5, but if he wins, or even if he finishes second, you might see him be the chalkiest guy in this range. And then the only other one, and I won't go into detail on him, but I'm interested in CT Pan, I think, a little bit, who won at one of the correlation courses at Heritage this year. Those would be my secondary guys in there.
Yeah, I guess my only pause would be the approach shots will be vastly different from
For sure.
And that was I can go on a little diatribe on his win
On
there,
his
but
win there, yeah.
it was weird. Like if you look at how he how he barely beat the field and what the weather was, and I don't know. I'm not going to talk you out of it, but I don't know if I would be looking as strongly at that comp.
It was more when I'm looking at the model that I talked about. He is the only golfer outside of Glover under 7.1 and below that has that high of a rating for me. So
fair enough.
With his sample size, but he's definitely secondary to the other guys.
All right, so into the 6K range we dive. There are what feels like a million golfers down here. And this is where we start getting into some of our favorite Euro guys, some of our favorite amateurs who will be playing and soon to be pros. And so I don't know how you want to break this down exactly, but I'd like to stay above 6.5K for now. What are your thoughts as far as, a couple guys, upper 6K range?
I think you'll be happy to hear that I don't have anybody under 6.5 to talk about this week.
That is a shocker.
I know. They priced up the Euros a little bit. But I would say my definite number one for that upper sixes is EVR, Eric Van Rooyen. I think he's got a tremendous ball striking game, was so good at Bethpage, has carried it over in the North America, I guess. He went back to Denmark, missed the cut for us, unfortunately, at Himmerland there. But playing well at Hamilton this week, a lot of birdies, a lot of missed 3-foot putts. But he can light it up DraftKings-wise. And he's shown out in his two majors. I mean, you look at last year at the Open, then he had this year at Bethpage. I think he's a strong play at 6.9K. He would be my definite number one, I would say, in the upper range. Who's your number one?
Probably EVR as well. The miscut in Denmark did not deter me. I used him this week. Not that it mattered because I had another guy just ruin that lineup. But hopefully he can T5 this morning somehow, some way. That'd be a nice little payday. But EVR for sure. For the reasons you mentioned, he will definitely find the lineups. And then I guess the next guy for me though is where it got a little tougher, and we do have a bet on this guy, Mr. Danny Willett. Now, I don't know for a fact yet if I will use him in DraftKings. I honestly, and he's I don't know where he's sitting in Canada right now, but I know he's been playing well. I think he actually fits the Canadian course.
T13.
Yeah, I think he fits that course better than this one, but I don't know, something. Maybe he'll be a little popular now with the Feinberg picture bump and and how he's playing in Canada. So I kind of have to flesh out this upper 6K range, because then I have guys who, like a Kyle Stanley, whose approach numbers from the key range are pretty solid. So it's hard for me to flesh this range out. But the top guy who actually rates out very well in the approach is Roberto Castro at 6.6. So I think based on that alone, I'm willing to take a complete chance, and I'll say Roberto Castro might be my number two guy from this range as far as the number of lineups in the 20 plus that I'll be making from this range. Let me phrase that.
That's an interesting. I thought one that was quite out there that I saw in the top 10 of our year-long approach buckets that we did on was Nate Lashley out of nowhere. Like
I played him. I played him this week too. He fits the Canada course very well.
So I mean, he was 10th. I guess if you take out Eddie, 9th on that combined strokes gained. I mean, his approach game stuff is quite crazy. But I would be maybe like a T20, maybe. I'm interested a little bit, and this is really hard. This is like testing short-term memory, like eliminating it to the T. But Man Rocket popped so much when I looked at how much better he does in those taking driver out of his hand. Like so much better getting into the fairways. Like I really need to do a deep dive
But
on
didn't
how his
Canada do that
rounds.
too?
That's why I want to see, like, was he doing that in Canada or not? Because if he was and he did that and he missed the cut, like, okay, I can settle that. So I'm gonna try to do like a deep synopsis on his 36 holes that he had, just to see, because the sample size is small. It's only about 8 rounds that we got a look at
I
in
honestly,
regards to.
knowing him, like knowing how he plays over in Europe, like I honestly think a lot of it is just still getting acclimated to the States, because it's just very inconsistent. Like you play very well at the Masters, you play very well at PGA, you miscut on Byron Nelson, which you'd think sets up pretty well. You missed the cut at Valero, but he finished 30th at the Players, shorter course. Pete Dye, he did well at the Match Play, which is Pete Dye as well, if I recall. I think.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
it is. It is.
So, and Pete Dye, I bring up Pete Dye not because he did Pebble, but because what he does with your eye lines and, where you got to put the ball, etc. So,
And I mean, he won Alfred Dunhill last year, which I know links
he
you get a
did,
little
yeah.
bit more wild with, but you probably want to be clubbing down in the wind a lot of times there. Um, yeah, maybe I've looked at his course fit a little bit wrong compared to what it may be. But then if I looked at it wrong, we were doing the right of playing in this week, and then he missed the cut. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to do a deep dive on him, but he popped just when I looked at that, and obviously talent-wise down there. But really, I mean, this is shocking for me, but I think that I can stay out of a lot of this range outside of kind of those guys I talked about. I don't see much going below 6.7. There was one, if I see, let's see what's he's priced at. Keep an eye on Morikawa at 6.7. He is, I think he's middling, maybe T30 right now. He is T25. So he is out of Cal. He just made his first pro start. So a West Coast guy goes up to Hamilton, gets his first pro start after he qualified for the U.S. Open in that strong Ohio sectional. And then he comes out T25 in his first pro start going into the last round. I think a T20 bet on him, especially someone who's got California ties a little bit, is pretty interesting because he's a dang good ball striker. He's like top 6 in the individual NCAA championships. So I think he is interesting, and Hovland's obviously priced at 6.7 there too. But I'm pretty into Morikawa, seeing what his T20 odds may be, especially if he does it this week.
Yeah, that's fair. I am with you though. Like, I think I need to spend more time in this 6K range, really narrowing it down, because I don't know. I'm with you. I'm still kind of torn. Like, I don't know if it's as rich as I remember it being in a lot of other majors. So, and maybe that's because of how the U.S. Open builds their field through a lot of qualifying, obviously. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think that'll be something. If you want more of our thoughts on the lower range, maybe if you're a premium subscriber, you can find us in the Slack chat, and we're more than willing to answer any questions you have there. And especially throughout the week, it is only Sunday, so there's plenty of, you don't need to build your lineups today or Monday morning like Bear Off does, and then just try to sit on your hands for 4 days and not tinker. So I think I'm with you. I think what we talked about is pretty solid of what I'm looking at, and maybe we'll come back near the end of the week and do. There's always the Wednesday night live stream that Drew and Jacob does. So, I mean, unless you have any closing thoughts, I mean, I'm pretty settled right now for where I'm at.
Yeah, and DraftKings has offered some different contests this week as it's compared to, obviously, the Millie has gone up to $100 per entry, but the normal like 444 has gone 555 3 max. The single entry is now doubled. I saw like the $75 single entry. I saw a $27 3 max. Like, they've offered some new contests this week. So spend some time researching there, seeing where it best fits of what you're looking at. But no, I mean, we'll be around all week long. Again, my favorite major of the year. So we're just on to seeing how this falls. Pay attention to that wind. If it picks up at all, I'm just going to keep an eye on the wind finder. But no, man, I think we echoed each other's thoughts a lot this week. I'm ready for it.
All right, that sounds good. So once again, I'll just remind everybody the Listener League will be out. We'll have the link out on Twitter. You can follow Fantasy Golf Bag on Twitter. You can follow myself at FantasyJesusDFS. Sky is at Golf Savages 2. And then if you would like to read the in-depth breakdown of the Pebble Beach article, again, you have to be a premium subscriber, but it's got a lot of neat information, and we really break down the driving distance buckets and the approach buckets we were talking about. We list out the top 25 in there, and you'll see all the percentages of where the shots were coming from. So that's pretty cool, especially if you're into course fit, which I think you should be. So other than that, good luck, everybody, and find us on Twitter or Premium Chat if you'd like to ask us further questions, and hopefully you see some green screens at the end of the week.
Amen to that. Let's go. Thanks, Axis.